Les premiers rangs sont vides, donc on a l'impression qu'il n'y a personne. Vous pouvez avancer un petit peu. Bonjour à toutes et à toutes.
So, hello everybody. We're going to start our conference on packaging in May. I'd like to introduce Michel Fontaine, who is giving us the honor of being here today, the president of the CNE, Conseil National de l'Emballage, the National Packaging Council, and the Utopia of Packaging.
D'ailleurs, vous avez vu, vous avez fait un tour de salon et
You've seen that,
avant même le produit, c'était des emballages.
and a lot of what's been presented is packaging, because without packaging, the products, of course, wouldn't be here in the salon. That's the whole idea is that it's there to protect and enable transportation of these products. The theme this year is healthy food, healthy planet. And when you talk about the environment, systematically, there's a stigmatization of the word. And packaging is the planet, and 65% of people in France say that there's too much packaging.
Et 44%, c'est-à-dire près de la moitié des Français.
So half of people, almost, say that they could do without packaging.
Donc, on peut dire que 44% des Français.
45% of French people think that in Made there shouldn't be any packaging. Packaging is often useless. That's what, it could be a badge for an association. Why? Why is it seen as being useless? Because the packaging is just there to pass the product on. And once you've opened it and used it, the packaging is thrown away. It's thrown into a selective thing. And when you throw something away, at the end of the day, you think that it's not useful. Otherwise, you'd keep it. Now, in a perfect world, for these 44% of people who believe in Father Christmas, there wouldn't be packaging. You could live without packaging. The products could just fall out of the sky. But, you can see that the packages there are all wrapped up, even if they are falling out of the sky. And Jordan cereal, if they didn't have packaging, this is what it would be like. And, directly on the consumer's head, all they've got to do is just hold their head up and open their mouths to consume. They're looking happy. Yeah, there's no packaging there. So less packaging, more life. I wanted to look in we didn't explain what packaging was. So in the dictionary, it says that packaging, in the definition, and for French term, is anything that wraps. So paper, cardboard, box, whatever. So that doesn't really explain much as a definition. Now, it's there to package, and package means putting it in packaging. So it's a circular definition. Maybe when you talk about the circular economy, now we've got a circular economy. So packaging is used to package, and to package means to put in packaging. The only good definition that I found dates from a long time ago. It dates from the La Pérouse. La Pérouse, who left, was a traveler, an explorer at the end of the 16th century. He went to travel around the world to circumnavigate the globe. And on his travels, he talked about preserving seeds. If it's too damp, they'll rot. You've got to find the right period between the two extremes, the right place. And he says it's very interesting because he says that the packaging is there to preserve the content. So it's an anti-waste tool. When he was, he was going away, it wasn't just people going around the world in 30 days. It lasted a year, 2 years. So when food was put in the hold, you had to be able to use it afterwards. And it says it's very important to have sealed the box. So it's got to be something that's closed. Why have you got to close it? Because that preserves. So it's got to be a closed package, hermetically sealed off from light. And because it's closed, you can't see what's on the inside. You've got to write what's on the inside on the box. So there's a good definition there. It preserves, it's closed, it's you can see what's in it. So I'm not from the French Academy, but maybe they could rewrite something there, rewrite the definition on packaging, and maybe you could suggest to Larousse or Robert, this would be something that the CNE could do. So in any case, you've got to find the right place, the happy medium. So the right protection, so that you don't have wasting of the content. And here, there's incredible knowledge around the place here. All these products, they're all better than the next. Each one's better than the next. But and the packaging is there to protect this, to protect the work that's been done by the craftsmen to produce these beautiful objects and things, and to bring them intact to the consumer. So packaging is the right information to guarantee that you're not going to get poisoned, and you can use the product quite safely. Packaging as well is eco-design, and means mastering all the environmental impact. The packaging itself, it's just a protection, but the container content couple. Now, why is it important? Well, people are concerned about the environment of their purchases. So it's extremely important, but as well, packaging must help them to use the product. We see a lot of people not rebuying, not because of the product itself, but because of problems opening it or problem using the packaging, whatever. So the packaging should help you be able to use it well. 76% of French people say they choose packages that are easy to use. They don't like them, they can do without them, but not without stuff that's easy to use. So it's got to provide a service to the user, to the consumer. This is from research done by Tetra Pak, and the right end of life. So it shouldn't be a waste, packaging waste. I'd say more a resource, future raw material, potential raw material, and it can be recycled and come back in a loop, a bit like the definition. So 93% we're talking about this with Michel, but 96% of people today do put their packaging, their waste package or used packaging in the right bin. That's the first ecological gesture that they do. And the subject of our conference is the great illusion. 3 illusions. But there's 2 others I found here in the salon. And the first is the idea of biodegradable. Biodegradable. There's 2 or 3 stands which have got biodegradable packaging, where I think there's confusion between biodegradable and compostable. We'll look at these themes later on with Michel. Comestible packaging. That's interesting. I don't know if I'd go teeth first into this hamburger and eat the paper with it, but apparently you can do it. So what does it mean? Does it mean that it's not going to poison me? Is it good? Is it tasty? I don't know. But edible packaging. In the there's a winner in Made where they've got a mussel shell that's edible. I mean, mussels are like oysters. I mean, you've got more on your plate at the end than you had at the beginning when you finished. So these mussels were packaged all the same. And as well, another subject, 73% of French people say that it would be better for the environment if food products were sold in bulk. Just last week, in fact, yesterday, I was in my supermarket in a civilized country, just next to Geneva. There's a guy from Geneva there, so we're very civilized people, I can tell you. And there's stuff in packaging, and a lot of waste, because apparently people serve themselves and decide they don't want it anymore, so I don't know what the shop does with those products. That's a photo. There was, and there was even a lady who, because the little trap wasn't working, and the little dispenser thing wasn't working, so she opened up the lid and put a hand in and was grabbing out handfuls like that. So that's bulk. There's vegan as well. I discovered a new concept in the salon. Citizen, and I'd like to have had an idea about the different packaging. We could talk about so biodegradable. Michel.
Allô, allô. Allô, allô. Oui, ça marche. Bien, bonjour à tous. Peut-être avant de répondre.
So just before replying to the questions, just a quick word on the use of packaging.
C'est vrai que beaucoup de gens se disent à quoi ça sert une fois qu'ils les ont utilisés.
So once they've used them, you need to remember that as soon as you've got something physical, whatever it is, whether it's food, whether it's whatever it is, when you've got a disconnection between the site of production and the site of consumption, you've got to do something. There's got to be some form of packaging to go from one place to another. Packaging is inevitable. You can't even question it. You've got to have packaging as soon as you disconnect production. In the Middle Ages, 99% and they didn't need anything else and no packaging. And there was already packaging in the Middle Ages because
population qui vivait dans les villes, qui vivait dans les châteaux et qui ne produisait rien, qui ne faisait que consommer. Donc, pour vous donner un chiffre, aujourd'hui en Europe,
today in Europe,
il y a 4%
there's 4% of the population
qui travaillent sur la
working on manufacturing foodstuffs,
100% qui
and there's 100% who are eating. So that's just to give you an idea
bien qu'il y a un moment
that at some point you've got to, there's something physical happening, and so digital won't do anything there on the disappearance or not of packaging. Packaging is something which is going to continue in the future. Digital is simply going to change the way things happen, but it's not going to remove it. You can't remove packaging. You can't send you can't send an object by Wi-Fi, by Wi-Fi. What Fabrice said, Fabrice brought up some questions, but won't do them in order. But edible packaging, I think, is an oxymoron. It doesn't have, it's meaningless. If a product is edible, it's a product. If you eat it, it's a product. And it's the questions of hygiene and on expiry date and so on. Packaging is packaging, though. It's not the same rules, if you like. So it's a good marketing thing, but it doesn't have it's meaningless in itself. All the experiences that have been seen on TV or put in the marketplace, they were all wrapped up. There was a well-known professor who manufactured Wikicells. They were like little eggs, if you like, little pods for all sorts of food stuff. And the day when he put them in the market, he put them in blisters because they had to be packaged. And so edible packaging doesn't remove anything. It's just a way of, it's a form of product. It's a bit like, it's like a rice ball that's wrapped up in seaweed. I mean, it's like the citizen packaging we saw together. I mean, it's they're words just put together, and they don't really have any meaning. Now, when you see edible packaging, most of the time, there's confusion between the cooked pastry, the medium, and it's called packaging, and there's strawberries and cream that are on it. But what you buy is a pie, a tart, and the packaging isn't talked about. People wouldn't sell just pastry shells, and so saying that it's packaging, but it's going to be in a cardboard box or whatever. I've never seen anywhere. There was a startup which showed us edible packaging, but it's still edible packaging. It's still a cooking medium and a product support. It's not pure packaging as such. So if there's no question on the subject, we can move on to the second theme, which is biodegradable packaging. Now, biodegradable is a big dream. When people say bio, people think bio, they think good. And in people's minds, it's a facility. So it's biodegradable, so I can just throw it in the countryside and country will, it's biodegradable. There's no point messing around and having to do anything with it. So for years and years now, a long time before the National Packaging Council, I've been fighting against this unhealthy side of the idea of biodegradable. It's a sort of negation of citizens' involvement in the problem. I mean, others are going to deal with it. It's somebody else's problem in a way. But biodegradable, it works in a very specific situation. And the CNE said that biodegradable with the standard, I can't remember what it is, but if you go onto the site, you can see it. And you've got to have the right conditions of temperature, of everything, all the right conditions, so that the product can really break down properly. And what I'm telling you is so true that people who've got the most degradable product in the world is cardboard. And people working in cardboard, they've understood that there's no point saying that cardboard is degradable. What they want to do is get it back to recycle it. But it's written biodegradable because it's fashionable. Yeah, there's always a fashion somewhere. You've got to do compromises with fashion, but overall, people who sell packaging and cardboard, they avoid saying that their product is biodegradable because there's no point. That's not going to help things. And if you didn't know, putting something in nature like cardboard or even paper, or even just paper tissue, it takes days and days and days to biodegrade. You need rain, you need sun, you need little microbes going along and eating it up. It's not magic, and that's not what we want for our packaging. What we want to do is to get packaging back, as Fabrice said earlier on. It's a resource. Empty packaging is a resource. It's done its job, and if you do things properly, it's going to do another job in the future, and again become another package. There are products like glass, like PET, plastics, metals today, cardboard, which are perfectly recyclable and which can give life back to other packaging. So really, everybody be very cautious about the use of the word biodegradable. Yeah, can you tell us a bit about more composting? Composting, the whole process. It's a bit the same sort of principle as a form of recycling. You got to get it back and send it somewhere else, or is it down at the bottom of the garden? Is it down the end of the garden? I mean, I live in the middle of Paris, so it's a bit complicated for me. But composting is something which can manage everything that's biodegradable, green waste, and other household waste. And when some plastics are made with compostable material, they can go into compost, but the compost must be well managed. It's got to be regularly turned and turned over and everything, and compostable bags can be used and put in well-managed compost. And we're really at the sort of the margins here of packaging. We're at the border of throwaway bags, and you can imagine that it could be compostable. There's no problem. There are even countries in the world that ask for green waste to be put in plastic bags, compostable plastic bags, so that there's nothing to do at the end of the day. It's put directly in a bag which is it goes directly into the compost. So for a bag, yeah, for a product that you're going to put on a shelf, there again, it's got no meaning, because compost or even biodegradable in contact with the product, in contact with water, in contact with fat or oil, it won't work. Primary packaging can't be compostable or biodegradable. Yeah, because for the biodegradability, it begins when it's produced. Yeah, absolutely. I had the opportunity in a previous life to test biodegradable plastics for water, oil, emulsions, and in just a few months and weeks, you can see that the packaging is virtually destroyed. I remember a few years ago, the first bottles in Pela, it was for water, and it lasted a month, and I had to, after a week, it wasn't like the first bottle. I had to change it 4 times. So all by itself, without anybody doing anything, it began to change its form and began breaking down and twisting, and because the breakdown process had started. Anyway, the packaging can be biodegradable, compostable, but it's got to be used as secondary or tertiary packaging. That's the case of cardboard as well. Transport is used in tertiary packaging. Now, the third question was bulk. Well, I've got a lot of difficulty with this. Several difficulties, but I think it's fine. The idea is great. But I think there are qualities to this way of distributing that you must recognize, and I've got no problem with this way of distributing stuff. That said, I've got 2 major problems. My first problem is that I was brought up, if you don't know me, I spent my life, professional life, in the L'Oréal group, and I was brought up in the culture of the product and the positive aspects. So when you look at an advert for L'Oréal, when you look at the spiel, you always see what the product can do, must do. Never you talk about a competitor. Never we compare ourselves to somebody else saying, I've got less this, I've got less this, I've got more of that. It's just, now, in what I was bothered about is that some people said in my distribution circuit, I've got less packaging. The hypermarkets did this, the mass retailers. I can't imagine a citizen consumer getting a negative message and being enthusiastic about the negative. When I buy a product, I want it to make me dream, whether it's food or a car. You've got to dream. You want to imagine, and when you're in the negative, you imagine that it's bad. Well, why is it less packaging? Well, there again, if it was true, you could say they're making the comparison like us, and you're saying, okay, I'm cheaper than the other. That's a terrible advert. So it shocks me less than you, but no, I mean, you can talk about products in a different way. No, but it's saying something which is wrong. It's not right. And bulk is a distribution circuit which uses other packaging. And primary packaging, as we know it, as we've seen it for the past 50 years, that's not the question. There was packaging before, in big quantities, that people don't see. And then, between the shop and the place of consumption, and so they buy packaging because I've done this, I've experienced this. When you arrive, like that, the shop sells you the packaging. In the photo here, there is packaging. Yeah, there's a distributor there, and there's plastic and paper, and then there's the whole question of the containers. I think it generates other things. Yeah, well, the second thing that troubled me in the approach was the idea of packaging free, because there is packaging. Those are the 2 things that troubled me. There's advertising, negative advertising, and secondly, it's false. Now, packaging for the bulk circuit, is it more virtuous than something in mass retail? I don't know, you need to look. I don't know. I can't answer that question. I can't analyze, this life cycle. You've got to look at on the distributor, because you've got to clean that. You've got to disinfect it. You've got to make sure that the hygiene is protected. Do you use chemicals? Do you water? I mean, what do you do? I don't know. If there's been a full life cycle analysis been done, giving any sort of outstanding results. There's no analysis saying here clearly, they're excellent, and here they're terrible. There's some examples of products where even, you ask the question about the complexity of it all. So, on the two sorts of bulk, if you like, or loose goods, there's this sort, and then there's something which is the reinvention of small shops when we were kids. In the village store, I mean, you ask things in Paris. You've got, they do this in the corner shops. They sell peanuts and stuff, and I've always seen that. Oh, and I think that selling loose products in bulk is a quality. You get a sort of a convivial side of things that you used to get at the old corner shop. You've got somebody there. You're not all by yourself in front of a shelf, and so it's a bit social. Maybe some advice. You see the product. If the distributor's there, they're transparent, so you can see. You can get the right dose. So this is very pleasant, and I respect that. But you need to have packaging, like the other circuits.
But that's the only way. Well, I have a house outside of Paris, and there's a huge hypermarket, and I won't say what it's called, but it's amongst the 4 biggest retailers in France, and they have sacrificed to the trend there. They put a half a shelving section there of bulk products, and it's just extraordinary. So in July, the store is like packed, and you have one little half wing where kids can go play because there's nothing going on there where the bulk is. So they've, sacrificed that to the current fad because they have to show that they have bulk. But when people come to supermarkets, it's not to buy bulk. It doesn't make sense because they're left on their own. There's no advice. There's no help there. It's just absurd. It's not a little store that's going to give you nice organic products. Yeah, it is absurd. But the figures show that in addition to the bags, they realize maybe there are problems. They're gloves. So it's like less packaging, but you got gloves and bags. So you have to understand that big trade, big commerce is 50 years old, but I guess 52 years old, we should say now, when you look at the product is all on its own, all by itself. Consumers are used to things now. They don't think when you go into a hypermarket or a supermarket or superstore. You're left on your own to handle things yourself. So the packaging has to be protected, it has to carry things, but it has to also give information. It has to facilitate the buyer's life before it facilitates the life of the producer. So it's a retail mode. We're calling it modern commerce, but modern trade, but maybe modern trade is going to be bulk. I don't have a problem with that, but it has to be different packaging. It can't be package-less.
je voudrais te faire. J'ai vu avant de venir donc deux nouveaux types d'emballage.
I
Donc,
saw
j'en ai
two
découvert
new types of
sur le
packaging.
salon.
One I discovered here at the trade fair, and it's over that way.
J'appelle ça l'emballage citoyen.
It's called citizen
C'est
packaging,
nouveau, c'est quoi?
citoyen packaging. So what is it? Is that new? What is that? What's a citizen packaging?
Je vais essayer de tenter une réponse.
Well, let me
Tous les-
try and give you an answer.
Tout le monde a bien compris aujourd'hui.
Today,
quand on
everyone
achète,
gets that when you
vous
buy
devez acheter, entre guillemets,
something,
intelligent.
you want to buy
C'est-à-dire qu'on
intelligently,
commence à
right?
se soucier,
We're
de se
starting to
dire, tiens, les fraises
Think,
du
worry
Chili,
about
là,
things like
je
strawberries
vais peut-être
coming
attendre
from
2-3 mois,
Chile.
je vais avoir celle de Bretagne.
You know, maybe if I just wait a couple of months, I can
Les
have
gens,
strawberries here in
on
France from
commence à se-
Brittany.
à se poser des questions sur
So
l'origine
people are
du produit,
thinking
sur
about product
qui l'a fait,
origins,
comment il a été
who made
fait,
it,
comment-
how it
Donc,
was
on
produced,
appelle
and
ça
so
la
on.
responsabilité sociale
So that's
et
social
environnementale.
responsibility
Donc,
and
la RSE,
environmental
je crois qu'on en
responsibility.
parlait
So
juste avant qu'on
I
arrive.
believe there was a presentation on
Il est
CSR
clair que
just
dans
before I
cette
came
tendance lourde
here. But it's
de
a
RSE,
very deep-seated trend. It's
le
a
fait de dire que l'emballage est citoyen,
in
ça veut
CSR,
dire qu'il
calling
respecte
packaging citizen
certain nombre de
packaging, it
codes
means
qu'on
it
connaît pas, je sais
respects
pas.
a certain
Ça
number of
n'a pas
codes
sens
that we
aujourd'hui
don't
pour
know
un
it. For
citoyen.
me, it doesn't mean
Et on
anything
peut
right now,
comprendre
but
que ça attire
C'est un petit
can
peu
understand that it's attractive. They're just kind of words, right? I think it's marketing at this stage. Well, there's another one I'm curious about.
J'ai beaucoup d'animaux.
Because I've lots of animals. I love animals. I wasn't allowed to bring them here, but I think I saw vegan packaging. What would that mean? Packaging not made from animals?
Je vais faire un petit peu de pub, juste au moment où elle se sauve d'ailleurs.
I've got a plug here, though. I'm going to plug for something. I had an editorial in a magazine on digestive packaging. Oh, somebody left. Did someone just leave? Yeah, but she knows the topic really well, so.
Si vous avez suivi la conférence, il y en avait une à midi là, sur les
There was a presentation at
les tendances,
noon
les
on
consommateurs,
trends
etc.
and
Je
consumers.
sais qu'il y a aujourd'hui, j'ai retenu le chiffre,
We know today that there are 7%
de consommateurs
of the
militants.
consumers
Je
who
les
are
appelle pas militants,
advocating.
je les appelle radicaux.
I think she called them radical
En ce moment, c'est pas un mot très-
consumers. I don't think that radical is a very pretty word right now, but we could maybe use that for other
Il y a 7% de gens qui
opportunities.
sont
But
militants,
7%
c'est-à-dire
are
qui
advocates.
achètent
People are
en ayant
buying
des convictions, ce qui est bien.
through
Hein.
conviction, and that's good.
Alors attends, mais
Well, how can
j'arrive.
packaging be?
Donc,
I'm getting there. Hold on.
Le fait d'avoir une conviction, et notamment la conviction
Having
de ne
conviction
pas vouloir manger
that you
d'animaux,
don't want to eat an animal,
ça se
okay,
respecte, il y a
that's
pas de- il y a pas de souci avec ça.
respectful.
Donc,
No
la
worries
question
there.
derrière, c'est j'emballe un produit vegan,
The idea is if you're packaging a vegan product, don't you want a vegan package?
il y a eu des
Well,
tentatives,
there have been
il y a
attempts.
des produits qui se déclarent vegan.
Products that are
Quand on regarde
stated as
bien,
being vegan,
quand on-
but if you
quand
look
on
very
analyse bien
closely,
comment est fait un emballage aujourd'hui,
if you analyze how
qu'il soit fait à
packaging is
partir de
made,
sable,
be it from
minerai de fer,
sand
de
or
papier
iron
carton,
ore or
il
cardboard,
n'y a rien qui trouble le
there
la
isn't
vie de nos
anything in
mammifères,
there that
chéris. Donc,
impacts our
il y a-
dear
on utilise
mammals,
plus cuir
mammal
depuis
friends.
longtemps. Donc,
We don't use
j'oserais
leather
dire que
anymore in
tous
the
les
packaging, so I
emballages
would say
sont
that
véganes.
all packaging is
Moi,
vegan.
dans la religion, un emballage cachère ou un emballage.
Well, what about religious? Well, from a religious standpoint, what about kosher or halal packaging? Okay, but back to vegan. Hold on, we'll get there. Why not?
Un
Sure.
emballage, il doit être neutre.
Packaging should be neutral,
Ou
regardless.
alors tester sur les animaux, peut-être.
Alors,
What would that mean, like not tested?
Non, mais ça
No
pourrait
animal
être,
testing?
est-ce
That's
que
a
les
different
emballages sont
topic.
testés sur les animaux?
Is packaging tested on animals?
je vais répondre sur le sujet. Je pense que au Conseil national de l'emballage, on a essayé
I'm
de
thinking
répondre
at
à
the
cette
National
question.
Packaging
Et
Council,
notre
we
réponse,
are
elle
trying
était
to
un
address
petit peu
these
facile, mais
issues,
en même temps, elle a-
and maybe our answer was a bit
la consistance
too easy,
juridique, c'est que
but it
le
has
mot
a
vegan
legal
n'est pas défini.
consistency. Legal
Le mot vegan
consistency.
n'est pas défini.
Vegan, the word vegan is not defined. Europe-wide, we don't know what that means. We don't share a definition for it. It's used a lot in business today, in trade, but there is no solid definition for it. So we are waiting to get the definition of it so that we can know exactly what vegan means. So tried to draw my own conclusion. If you look at the constitution and the makeup of the packaging, there's not a problem. There's no problem there. The only problem I see, though, in everything I've seen in the vegan movement are animal testing. Now, animal testing, of course, is a topic that I'm very familiar with. Again, because cosmetics have always been in the hot seat. Ingredients that were tested on animals, of course, that was unbearable to imagine that on mice or whatever. But you have to keep in mind that today there are a lot of ingredients that have been tested, and they don't need to be tested anymore, right? So there are many ingredients that can be tested with alternative methods, and that's great. And there are other new ingredients that are unknown yet, and it makes more sense. It's wiser to test them on animals than on humans. Mice, whatever, I don't know, rats, lab rats, I don't know. I think it's normal that for civilization's progress requires certain tests on animals to be sure of their safety. Maybe the vegan movement doesn't agree with that, but I think personally it's rather reassuring that you can test on animals when it's necessary. But you're not a radical? I am not a radical. I think we've pretty much covered our topic. And if you guys have any questions, we're happy to answer those. The most iconoclastic as possible. I need the mic. Let's get the mic to the person. Thank you. Hi. We didn't talk about green packaging. I'd like to know what you think or what you see as the outlook, or perhaps a reuse of green. Instead of recycling, which means it has to be heated at very high temperatures, what we used to call consignment before, that's gone off our radar practically. What do you think about that? Does that make sense? Is that interesting? Plausible? Is there a future in that? Or do you not see anything there? Let me say something. It's coming back on our radar, so consignment. It's definitely coming back on the radar, and more than you think. In the National Packaging Council, we're working with the Ministry of the Environment Department there. I think recycled, reused packaging is good. Now, you have to think about the cost, though. If you look at consignment, now why did it disappear in all these developed countries? It's really just a matter of money. To give you a number that I used in the book I wrote on packaging, between the time when we had consignment post-war in France and now, our personal spend on food has been cut in half. Now, 15–16% of what we spent on food post-war has now gone down to about 7–8%. So we're spending our money on a lot of other things. On our housing, transportation, vacation, communication with our telephones and that. Today, food, globally speaking, there's some very poor people where it represents more of their spend, but for the average French citizen, it's 8%. If we reintroduced consignment, I think it would be costly, but it's good, socially speaking. It would create jobs. It would create a whole different ecosystem. And I think you have to look at the environmental impact, transportation, washing, decontamination. The ADEME is the environmental arm of the department. They calculated some hundreds or thousands of kilometers around the consumption location. Consignment didn't make sense because economically it's very expensive.
ça peut avoir du sens pour des
So it could make
applications
sense for
ponctuelles,
certain
locales.
occasional local
Vous
applications.
êtes, je dis n'importe quoi, mais vous êtes sur une île.
But let's say you're on an
Par
island,
définition, une
and so
petite
by
surface,
definition, a
et
small
vous
surface
avez,
area.
un fabricant de bière dans l'île.
And you've
Bon,
got a
bah,
beer
que la
producer on that
bière,
island.
soit
Well,
consignée et revienne,
that beer
ça a
being,
probablement du sens.
the bottles being
Mais je ne pense
consigned
pas que
and consignment
on revienne en
and
arrière.
coming back,
Je pense
that would
pas que ça ait
make
vraiment
sense,
du
but
sens.
I don't see us going backwards there.
Je pense que la consigne,
You made a good point there.
bon, c'est
Consignment
évidemment un
is
geste qui paraît
clearly
extrêmement vertueux.
a gesture that
Et
seems
même la
very virtuous,
réutilisation.
even
Et
reuse.
si vous regardez
but
l'analyse de cycle de
if
vie
you
d'un
look at
produit
the
emballé,
analysis
vous voyez
of a
que
life cycle
essentiellement,
of a
l'impact
packaged
écologique,
product,
c'est le produit,
the
après,
ecological
c'est le
impact is the
transport.
product first, and then it's the
La
transportation or the
consigne, c'est
shipping.
rajouter du transport
So
sur le produit.
consignment means adding
C'est,
transportation to the
pourquoi?
product.
Parce que ça va être
So that
de
means
ramener
it's bringing
des
back
emballages vides. Et les
empty
emballages vides, ça reste du
packaging,
volume.
and empty
C'est beaucoup plus
packaging
de volume
represents
que de poids.
volumes more so than weight.
Donc, c'est pérenne lorsque
So
les camions qui
it can be
livrent,
sustainable
les
when
points
the
de vente
delivery
reviennent,
trucks go to
à
the
vide.
sales
Si on
outlet and they
organise
come
un
back
circuit
empty.
qui fait,
You have to organize a circuit.
mais, la consigne par le consommateur, c'est,
But consumer,
moi je pense
Based
qu'il faut
consignment,
vraiment calculer
I
en dehors
think
du coût, hein, parce
you have to
que
calculate it
moi, je pense
outside
qu'on
of
est
just
largement
cost.
au-dessus de moyens en termes de coût, donc
But
il
I
faut
think it would
revenir à une
be
raison.
it wouldn't be
Maintenant, cette raison,
cost efficient. You'd have to come back to a
nous oblige quand même à
reason,
évaluer les impacts
and the reason
écologiques des
is
choses.
evaluating the ecological
Et,
impacts.
moi, je serais pour la consigne
And I would be
à partir
for
du moment où on
consignment
montrera, on démontrera
when you
que,
can demonstrate that
c'est plus intelligent et
it's
plus,
more intelligent
respectueux pour
and more
l'environnement
respectful for the
faire de la
environment
consigne que faire du
to have
recyclage.
consignment as opposed to recycling.
Aujourd'hui, avec le recyclage du
Because
verre,
today with glass
qui, je rappelle, est quand
recycling,
même le premier
which let me remind you is the leading packaging material that was being recycled way before eco packaging in the European directives. This was before. So because of these glass markets, because of it being done in glass is why we decided to do it in on other products. So
Compléter ma réponse
let me
par,
add to my
par la chose
response there with the following. You have to all
pas
know,
beaucoup su, c'est que
and this isn't known by a
il y
lot of
deux
people,
études très sérieuses
there are
qui
two
ont été
very
faites en
serious
Angleterre et en
studies
France
that were conducted in
qui
the
donnent
UK
à
and
peu
in
près les mêmes
France
résultats.
that give you, both
Quand
UK
vous
and France,
regardez
that give you
l'impact
similar results. If you
CO2
look
de
at the
ce que vous
CO2
mangez,
impact
de
of what you
l'impact
eat,
CO2,
the
hein,
CO2
c'est-à-dire
impact,
l'impact carbone,
so the carbon impact,
dans le panier moyen de
if you look at it
l'occidental que nous sommes.
in the average shopping
Si la
basket
dépense en
amongst us
CO2,
Westerners, if the
l'impact en CO2 est de
CO2
100,
impact is
ce que
at
l'on mange,
100,
ce que l'on boit
what we
est de
eat and what we
51.
drink is at 51.
51. Le deuxième poste
Now
derrière,
the second
c'est ce que l'on fait chez
area will be what we
C'est-à-dire
do in the home.
nous, ce que l'on chauffe, ce que l'on
So
cuit,
heating,
ce que l'on
cooking,
congèle, ce que l'on met au
freezing,
frigo, ce
putting
que
in the
l'on micro-ondes.
refrigerating,
Ça
microwaving,
représente 31%
that represents
de l'impact
31%
CO2.
of the CO2
C'est-à-dire que
impact
si
of a
vous
person.
mangiez
So if
sans
you
frigo,
ate,
sans-
say, without a
sans vos
fridge,
appareils ménagers,
without the
vous
your
auriez
cooking
31%
appliances, you
d'économie
would
d'impact CO2.
spare
Et puis
31% of
l'emballage,
the
il
CO2 effect.
représente, d'après cette étude,
Now,
entre
packaging
8
based on this
et
study
10%.
represents between 8 and
8%
10%.
pour l'étude française,
8% for the
10%
French study,
pour l'étude
10% for the
anglaise.
UK study.
Donc, moi, je veux bien que la consigne soit,
So, yeah, I'd
soit quelque chose de
Love to
vertueux,
see
mais
consignment be
on
something
n'attaque pas les
virtuous,
90%
but we're
autres.
not
Vous voyez
getting
ce que je
that
veux dire?
other
Je dis pas
remaining
qu'il faut rien faire, hein.
90%.
Encore une
I'm
fois,
not saying we
moi,
shouldn't
cette
do
idée,
anything,
Moi, un emballage consigné qui est
because for me,
réemployé,
something that's consigned,
pour moi, c'est un emballage
reused,
que l'on doit respecter.
that's something that
Et
needs to
le
be
problème, il
respected.
est
But the
malheureusement
problem
pas là. Alors, il
is
est là
not
parce que les
there.
médias ont
That's not
envie
the
qu'il soit
problem.
là, parce que
Problem,
c'est facile.
the media wants it to be
C'est
there,
comme
but
la
that's
SNCF,
because that would
on
be
parle
easy. It's like the
beaucoup
French
des
rail
trains qui arrivent
system.
en
We
retard
talk
et
about
on
the
parle
trains that
pas
are
des-
late,
des
but we never talk about
87%
the
des trains qui arrivent à
97% of the trains
C'est la
that
vie, c'est
are on
comme ça,
time. That's just life.
Il faut faire avec la communication que l'on a. Et avec
Well, we
les
have to deal with
citoyens
the
que l'on a.
media and the
Mais le
communication
problème,
and
il
the
est pas
citizens
vraiment
we
dans
have.
l'emballage.
The problem really isn't with the packaging.
Suisse, ils arrivent à 93% à l'heure.
The Swiss are at the 93%.
Moi, je prends toujours
So I think we
un
can do better.
D'autres questions?
I always take late trains. Anyway, other questions?
Dame qui a- et puis je vous donne la parole après, juste après.
Ladies first, and you'll be next. Sir. Well, hello. What do you think about organic fruits sold in supermarkets, say Kiwi and others? They're in a plastic package, plastic little barquette, and they've been
Alors,
shipped
je
in
vais
boxes
pas
and
vous
all that.
répondre sur le côté bio
I'm
du
not going to
produit parce que
answer
j'y connais
about the
strictement rien.
organic side of the product because I don't know anything about that. But what I can assure you is plastic
Autour des fruits
around the fruit that's
c'est quelque
wrapping
chose
the fruits
qui
is something
protège.
that
Et
protects
par
the
nature,
fruits,
qui est neutre. Hein,
and
je
just
voulais le dire tout à l'heure, mais
is neutral.
s'il y a des
By its
packageurs
nature
dans la
is
salle,
neutral. If
ils
there are
savent que le
packagers here in the
premier-
room, they know that
la
the
première
first
qualité qu'on demande à un emballage,
quality
c'est
that
un emballage
is required by
primaire, c'est d'être
packaging
neutre
is
vis-à-vis
for
de
it
ce
to be
qu'il touche,
neutral
de ce qu'il
as
contient.
regards what it's
Donc,
touching,
l'emballage plastique qui va être autour
what's
du
inside it. So
produit bio,
plastic
bah,
around
il
an
va rien
organic
lui faire, il va
product
le
isn't going to
protéger.
do anything
Et,
to the
on a même des
product
études
aside
dans
from
certains
protecting
pays,
it. There's some studies in
pas en France malheureusement, mais
some
en
countries, not in
Angleterre,
France,
au Japon,
unfortunately, but in the
on voit
UK
que
and Japan,
le
we
fait
see
de
that
mettre sous plastique
putting
permet de garder
products in
l'humidité,
plastic
c'est-à-dire de
maintain
prolonger la
the
durée de vie du fruit,
moisture
qui est
so that
ainsi,
extends its
emballé.
life.
Si vous allez au
If it's
Japon,
packaged in plastic, if you
l'ensemble
go
des
to
fruits
Japan, all of their
est
fruits
emballé uniquement,
is
quand
wrapped
je dis uniquement,
individually
par 100 grammes,
in
par 200
plastic.
grammes, par 300
Maybe
grammes.
100 grams,
Mais
200
tout
grams,
est
300
emballé.
grams, but everything is
Si vous allez
packaged.
en Angleterre, il y en a beaucoup
If you
plus
go to
qui
the
sont
UK,
emballés.
much
En
more.
France, on est dans un vrac.
Now in France, we
assez
have true
rustique.
bulk, kind of rustic
Quand
bulk.
ça vient de fermes bio, j'imagine
And when it
qu'ils
comes
ont
from
envie de
an
protéger
organic
pour garder leur
farm, they
propriété.
want to protect them. They want to protect their goods, I imagine.
Monsieur,
Monsieur,
je ne sais pas si j'ai bien répondu, mais
I'm not sure if that answers your question.
demandez si... Oui, apparemment.
Yes, apparently. You
Moi,
did
je-
answer the
je
question.
veux dire, pour une réponse, j'ai vu aux États-Unis une noix de coco emballée. Là, j'ai trouvé ça un petit peu
I saw in the United States a coconut that was plastic wrapped, and I found that
bizarre.
strange.
Dans l'emballage, il y a un
Now,
rôle.
in packaging, is there a role that you didn't want to talk about, and that's information on the production date and the expire date? Whereas in bulk, you don't have that information on the containers, on the batch number, origin, nor its expire date. Do you have any experience or opinions there? I have an opinion,
Je voulais pas,
but I didn't want to
venir ici pour dire que le vrac,
come here
c'est
and
n'importe quoi.
say that
C'est pas vrai.
vrac
Je pense qu'il y a des
is
vracs
could
qui
be
sont,
anything and
encore une
everything.
fois, tout à fait respectables.
I agree that
Mais
there's a
il
lot
est
of.
clair que le
I
vrac
think that there's a lot of bulk
introduit
that
la
is
notion de commerçant,
respectable, but
et
it
donc
does
de
introduce the notion
responsabilité
of a
du
tradesman,
commerçant.
of a merchant,
C'est-à-dire c'est au
of
commerçant
the seller,
de savoir
and
ce qu'il
they
vous
have
vend.
the responsibility.
C'est au
They have to
commerçant d'assumer
be the
l'hygiène.
guarantors of what they're
C'est
selling
lui
you,
qui
the
va
hygiene,
répondre au consommateur s'il y a un problème.
and so on, and
De
they
la
would
même
be held
façon, quand vous
accountable.
achetez chez votre boucher,
Should there,
il
should
vous
there be
dit
a
pas
problem? Same as when
s'il
you
y a
go
une
to a
date de
butcher
péremption.
shop, the
Mais vous
butcher doesn't
connaissez le
tell you
boucher,
there's
vous le
an
voyez tous les
expired
jours,
date,
et
but
donc
you
vous
know
êtes
your butcher.
capable
You
de
see him
revenir
every
le
day,
lendemain
so you can
et
come
lui
back the
dire,
next
dis
day and
donc,
say,
la
hey,
viande, elle sentait mauvais
hey,
ou je sais
my
pas
meat
quoi.
last night
Donc
was turned, was spoiled.
il n'y a pas de date de péremption,
So
vous
there
avez
is
raison.
no expired date. You're
Pourquoi?
right
Parce
on
que
bulk,
tout
but
repose
the
sur les
reason is
bonnes
it's all
pratiques
based on good
que le magasin
practices
va mettre en œuvre
in the store that
pour
they will
stocker,
implement to
pour
store,
garder au frais,
maintain
pour
fresh,
mettre à disposition avec
and make
l'hygiène
available with the
suffisante.
proper
Et
hygiene.
d'ailleurs, le CNE a fait un document en disant
And CNU produced a
vous avez,
document
pour les
saying,
produits préemballés, vous
okay, for
avez
prepackaged
ça de
products,
loi.
you have
pour les produits en
these
vrac,
kinds of laws,
il y
but
en
for
a
the bulk,
deux.
you have two
Donc,
laws,
effectivement,
right? So
aujourd'hui, il y a une disproportion. C'est
today
que
it is
le
disproportionate.
vrac, comme les produits à la coupe, les
Bulk,
produits que vous achetez sur
just
un marché,
like
il y a très peu
cut
de
products that you
réglementation.
buy in an open
Vous
market,
pouvez,
there is very
vous,
little legislation
prendre
there.
une patente de commerçant et vendre ce que vous voulez sur un marché.
You can set up a
C'est
stand and go
votre
sell whatever you
responsabilité
want
que vous engagez.
in an
Encore
open market,
faut-il
in
que
a farmer's market,
que
but that's
le
your
client vous
responsibility.
retrouve. Mais
You know,
quand
if the
vous
customer
êtes là
finds you,
avec pignon
if
sur
the
rue, il vous
customer can
retrouve.
find you,
Donc,
that's
c'est un
you
autre
know
moyen de
your problem. If
distribution.
you're
Le
roaming
produit
or traveling, they
ne-
can't catch you. But if you
n'informe
have
rien, le produit
a
ne
store,
dit
they know
rien.
where you are.
Mais
So
c'est le
the
commerçant
packaging doesn't
qui
speak, the
prend
product
en
doesn't
charge
speak, but
cette fonction.
the merchant takes that
Je sais pas si
responsibility
j'ai-
on. Does that
Et
answer your
évidemment, on
question?
attend du commerçant qu'il soit
And yes, we do
loyal,
expect the customers to
enfin,
be
qu'il fasse tout ce qu'il faut pour que ça soit bon.
to play fair and to do what they need
Bien
to do to
évidemment.
keep it
Comme
proper,
c'était à l'ancienne,
clean and healthy.
il y
Just
a
like in the old
50 ans,
days, you know,
c'était
50
votre
years
épicier
ago,
du coin
your
qui
local
faisait son affaire
general
de la
store
bonne
owner
conservation du produit,
maintained
de la
the
bonne
products
qualité du produit.
fresh, and they
Et
were
le commerce
responsible for the
moderne
quality
a enlevé la
that product.
responsabilité au commerçant.
So modern
C'est maintenant
commerce
la
has
marque
taken the
qui a cette responsabilité parce
responsibility away from
qu'elle est
the
affichée
tradesman, the
et c'est
merchant.
elle
It's
qui
the
indique la date de
brand.
péremption.
Now the brand indicates the
D'autres
expiry date.
questions dans
Any
la
other
salle, une
questions?
dernière?
One last
Non.
one.
Alors, je vous
No.
invite à
Well, then, let me
passer si vous voulez en savoir plus.
Invite you to stop
sur
by
plein
our
de choses
stand
sur
if you want more
l'emballage. J'ai
information
une
on
petite brochure
packaging.
qui est
We have a
distribuée
brochure.
un petit peu plus loin. moi à
available
l'espace
a little bit
expert
further
du
at the
CNE
expert space
sur
in
le
the
juste
CNU,
emballage
CNU, sorry, on
qui
the right packaging,
traite
fair
de
packaging.
différents sujets dont nous avons parlé. Et je vous invite
And it
vraiment
covers
à
the various
aller la
topics we addressed here,
récupérer
and so please
et
do
rencontrer
help yourself to one of those,
peut-être
and you can meet. Would you like one?
Ah, une dernière question.
Okay, one last question.
Je suis passionné par l'avenir.
I'm really
Et
excited
j'aimerais
about the
entendre tous
future,
les deux nous dire ce que seront les emballages dans
and
20
I'd
ans.
like you to tell me what you think packaging will be
Alors,
like in 20
je vais
years'
me
time.
lancer d'abord, mais
Okay,
je
I'm going to jump
laisserai
in and I'll
Fabrice
leave
conclure.
Fabrice to conclude.
D'abord,
because he's
dans 20
younger,
ans,
right?
il y aura encore
Okay.
des emballages.
In 20 years' time,
Ça,
there
c'est
still
sûr.
will be packaging.
On est dans un monde aujourd'hui où
The world
l'emballage
today
croît.
Is seeing an
C'est-à-dire que
increase in
il
packaging
croît de deux façons. Dans les
in two
pays
ways.
civilisés,
In
à
civilized
cause du e-commerce,
countries due to
ce que
e-commerce.
vous achetiez en vrac dans votre caddie, maintenant vous le
Not
recevez
used to
souvent
buy it
suremballé chez vous.
in a package in your
C'est la
cart.
tendance.
Now,
C'est-à-dire que
when you have it
vous commencez à
sent to you
recevoir
over
du
the
carton
internet, you have
ondulé.
additional.
Vous commencez à mettre dans la poubelle
packaging.
jaune du carton ondulé, ce que vous ne faisiez pas jusqu'alors.
You are putting
Et quand vous
cardboard
voyez les
in
évolutions
your
qu'Amazon
recycle
nous
bin
promet,
now that you didn't used to.
Notamment, je vois à Paris qui
Okay, I
commence
see
à
in
vendre
Paris
de
they're starting to
l'alimentaire.
sell.
On peut raisonnablement
products,
penser
you
qu'on
can
va
think
encore
that
emballer un peu plus.
You're going to
Et puis,
package
il y a les
even
pays
more. Plus
sous-développés
you have
qui
other
deviennent développés, qui emballent plus.
developing
Donc, je
countries that
reprends
are
les éléments
starting
que
to use more
j'utilisais
packaging.
devant
So
une école d'ingénieurs d'emballage.
I was
Je leur
talking to
disais,
an
n'ayez pas de
engineering
crainte.
packaging
Votre boulot, il est assuré pour
school. I
l'avenir.
said, don't worry,
Il y
you
aura de
guys,
plus en plus
you'll
d'emballages.
see increasing
Alors maintenant, quels
amounts
seront-ils
of packaging. Now, what types
Quels
of packaging will they
seront-ils
be?
Ça sera à la mesure des matériaux
be
qui seront là
now
dans 20 ans.
Depending on
C'est-à-dire
what
que
types
quand
of
vous
materials
regardez
are available in
les
20 years'
emballages
time. If
qui
you look
étaient là,
at
chez les Romains, eh ben, c'était
what
les
the
matériaux
Romans
qui
used,
étaient
it
disponibles
was
chez
what
les
they
Romains,
had available.
c'est-à-dire c'était de la terre cuite,
Right, it was
c'était
terracotta,
des amphores,
it
parce qu'ils
was
n'avaient pas autre chose.
stoneware,
Ils n'avaient pas de plastique, ils
because they
n'avaient
didn't have plastic.
pas encore pensé
They hadn't
aux métaux.
thought about metals
Et
yet.
petit à petit, au fur et à mesure où les technologies ont amené le
And little
verre,
by little, as
les
technology
métaux,
brings
on
us
a changé
glass,
les matériaux
metal,
d'emballage.
we've changed our
Peut-être que dans
packaging
20 ans, il y aura un plastique
needs.
génial
Maybe
qu'on ne
there'll be some
connaît pas
amazing plastic
qui
that we
viendra
haven't met
bouleverser
yet, we
tout
haven't seen yet,
et supprimer les métaux, le
that
verre.
will
Mais il y aura emballage.
eliminate
Alors moi, je peux
metal and glass.
compléter sur les matériaux. Je pense qu'il y a quelque
In
chose
terms of
qui
materials, I think there's
fondamentalement va changer
something
sur
that will
l'emballage.
change fundamentally.
On n'en prend pas assez conscience, c'est que
And we
l'emballage,
don't
avant
seem to
tout,
take
l'emballage
that
qu'on connaît aujourd'hui,
into account.
il est essentiellement créé pour
Packaging
un commerce
today
en grande distribution
is
et
essentially
service.
for
Tous les emballages que
self-service
vous voyez là, quasiment à
retailing
90%
superstores, and that's
sont des emballages
almost
pour vendre
what
dans
you
les
see there.
supermarchés.
90% of what's
Dans 20
out there
ans,
is to be sold in
on
supermarkets,
n'en
whereas in
vendra
20 years'
pas
time,
uniquement dans les
we
supermarchés.
won't only be
On vendra
selling in
aujourd'hui
supermarkets.
que nous vend Amazon
Today,
en
with
grande-
what Amazon
comment
is
ça s'appelle,
going
sur
to be
Internet,
selling
c'est des emballages
over
de
the internet
supermarchés.
it's
Avec
supermarket
des
packaging
fonctionnalités,
with
parce
different
qu'il y a la
functions.
fonctionnalité industrielle, la
There's the
fonctionnalité
industrial
de l'emballage
function,
dans le réseau de distribution, la
and then
fonctionnalité
there's the
consommateur.
distribution
Et,
network, the retail network, and then there's
la
consumer
fonctionnalité du recyclage. On peut
packaging.
penser
And then
que
there's,
c'est
you can think about
les trois premières
recycling, but you might think about the
fonctionnalités
first
ne vont pas
three
fondamentalement
functions
changer.
won't
Nous
change
doivons pas
fundamentally.
pousser, notre manière d'utiliser les produits ne va pas
We
changer.
won't change
Par contre,
necessarily
l'endroit
our
où on va
habits,
les
how we
acheter va
use the
changer.
products, but the way we
Il y a
buy them
aucune
will
raison
change.
qu'un emballage vendu sur Internet soit
Packaging
affiche,
sold on the internet
publicitaire de grande distribution. Donc il y a
could
des fonctionnalités, je pense, à
be
enlever
an advertising medium
au
or
commerce de
maybe
vente
not. So
de l'emballage qu'il faut amener au
tradesmen,
nouveau type de
merchants
commerce.
who
C'est-à-dire que les-
package with their
pourquoi-
own
pourquoi ça va
bags,
sur
and that
les emballages
makes sense, but you won't necessarily
par
see that
Internet,
coming
c'est
from
parce
them.
qu'on vous met dans des grandes boîtes des emballages
internet.
que vous achetez dans les
They'll be
supermarchés.
in big boxes,
Or,
right?
si on se met à se dire qu'on
So if you
conçoit
start
des emballages uniquement pour
thinking
ça, là il va
or
changer.
designing
De la même
packaging
manière
just
que
for that,
moi,
it will
moi, je suis
change.
pas
The
du
same
tout
as for
contre le vrac,
bulk.
je
I'm
pense
not
que
at
le
all
vrac,
against
il
bulk,
manque l'emballage du vrac.
but I think we
C'est-à-dire un
haven't
truc
yet
qu'on est
discovered
obligé
the
de
right
nettoyer, qui est
bulk packaging.
sécurisé,
You have to clean it, you have to make it secure, you have to have something that you can put straight in there to serve, to dose and everything. You want 100 grams or whatever. There are many things that are going to be invented. So it's reinventing packaging based on the retail circuit and the pathway that the product is going to take from the producer to the consumer. And that's just amazing for the designers. It's not about material though. It's always going to be paper, cardboard, some plastic, maybe biosourced plastic, organic sourced plastic, mineral, whatever, but it's always going to be metals. There will still be metals, maybe some new fantastic material will come out. I don't know, but there's still function. So that's it. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening.